Who killed Charlie Kirk? Of course, right now, the media is reporting the suspect is in custody. The FBI has released an overwhelming amount of evidence. But some people are questioning this evidence. Liberals are questioning the motive. They tried framing this man as a conservative. And before the dust had even settled, everyone was trying to blame their perceived enemy for being responsible for the death of Charlie Kirk. Now, there are people on the left who believe they have every reason to claim this guy is a right-winger, and they've put those videos out. People on the right say they have every reason to believe this guy was clearly a leftist. And of course, there are people who say Israel, and they say they have every reason in the world to blame Israel. What I can say right now is there does seem to be a simple solution to this. A man motivated by online left ideology who was dating a trans person wanted to assassinate Charlie Kirk, one of the most prominent conservative voices, who was responsible for the victory of Donald Trump, largely, and who speaks out against trans people. And it was just after he mentioned trans mass shootings, this individual, who was reportedly has a trans lover, shot and killed him. But simple solution doesn't always mean correct. There is just a tendency towards that. So what I want to do is I want to go through the theories over what really happened. Now, of course, I think it's fair to say that the conservative theory is largely debunked at this point. But there are many prominent individuals that are bringing up the question of Israeli influence. And I think it's worth talking about. Certainly in my view and in my sourcing on this story, the information conveyed to me by those who work with Charlie, friends of ours from his team, and everyone we've talked to, is that yet Israel has literally nothing to do with this. But there are questions around pressure from donors pertaining to the issue of Israel. Now, I will say this first and foremost, because I know people are going to say I have my biases. Charlie Kirk was the biggest proponent of Israel. But I'm going to show you statements from Tucker Carlson, Matt Gaetz, Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly even, that make it seem like Charlie had turned on Israel. Now, in my conversations with people, I am not in those circles as Tucker, Candace, or whatever. I did not know Charlie nearly as well as they did. But in these conversations that I've had, this is not the case. There was no serious animosity between Charlie Kirk and Israeli donors to such an extreme degree. In fact, what's been conveyed to me, and by all means, you're free to question whatever you want to believe. This is just the sourcing I've done. I am going to show you what Candace and Tucker and Matt Gaetz and others have to say. What's conveyed to me is that Charlie, despite his criticisms of Israel, which were not that serious, he was actively working on behalf of donors. He was actively working towards his own ideology, which was in defense of Israel. In fact, you can watch these videos online where he's trying to convince young men to effectively support Israel. Now, take it for what it is. I think it's important to look at how large organizations are affected by their donors. And I want to give you my honest assessment, but I want to show you what these people are actually saying. And I don't think it's fair to call them crazy. I certainly do not believe, and again, my personal view, I'm going to bring up Matt Walsh's assessment and the current evidence, as well as questions I have over why. Doesn't all add up? I think it's fair. But there are simple solutions here, and there are questions. And I think considering prominent voices like Tucker Carlson, as well as Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens, these cannot be outright dismissed. So I say this in all seriousness and in good faith. Please take the opportunity to watch this assessment, critically analyze it, and I say this with the utmost respect. Please try not to get overly emotional over on what you think really happened and listen to what people are saying, whether it's me, anyone else, and then decide for yourself. I've already told you what I think. I think this was a deranged leftist. I think that there is more to the story than just a lone actor. I believe, as we already know, there are people who had foreknowledge. Evidence shows this. The question is, was this a radical leftist cell? Was this something bigger? Some have even put out videos showing that the shooter may have been at a different angle. But I have a lot to break down in that, and I'll give you my thoughts. And I know that those who have pushed forward these theories will largely disagree with me, but I think I can give you a rational assessment. Again, feel free to disagree and comment and tell me what you think. Now, before we get started, my friends, check out castbrew.com to support the show. We've got a bunch of great coffee. We've got Ian's Graphene Dream, everybody's favorite, as well as Appalachian Nights. Appalachian Nights still is in the number one slot, mind you, but we got great coffee blends. Support the show. And don't forget, join our Discord server. I'm actually curious to hear what you think. So if you're not going to comment below and you want to get deeper in the conversation, you can go to timcast.com/join, timcast.com, click join us, join our Discord server, and let's have this conversation in this debate. I'll say it again. I think it's silly to outright dismiss prominent voices that have all come out and said something similar. While I certainly am critical of what I would describe as Israel derangement syndrome, that does not mean that everyone who criticizes Israel is wrong. And when you have Tucker, Candace, Matt Gaetz, Cernovich, Megyn Kelly, these are not voices to immediately disregard. Not that they are all explicitly stating Israel killed Charlie Kirk. I think that idea is actually silly. Again, first, we'll start with this story from ABC News. Foreign disinformation about Charlie Kirk's killing seeks to widen U.S. divisions. Russia moved quickly to exploit conservative activist Charlie Kirk's shooting death at Utah College, with groups linked to the Kremlin spreading false and misleading claims that experts say are designed to incite violence. Really? They say Chinese and pro-Iranian groups spread disinformation about the shooting, with those loyal to Iran's interest backing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, while bots linked to Beijing claimed Kirk's death shows the U.S. is violent, polarized, and dysfunctional. just pick whichever lie you want to. Now, of course, I will wait for the comments to say Tim Pool was paid by Russia, not correct, or that because I went to a meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, I am somehow now under the influence of Israel. You believe whatever you want, okay? I will say, full disclosure, let's talk about those things as we preface this story. The Russia story is closed. In December, I was informed by my legal team the U.S. government under Biden was no longer pursuing this case against the purported Russian influence campaign. Wonder why they gave it up after an election. And just recently, Lauren Chen issued a statement where she explained that in April, the case was totally dismissed and they have no evidence of anything, nor have they ever published anything. The story is largely false. My company and the work that I do has only ever been funded by me, and the work that I do through sponsors, members, or otherwise. We have taken no political money. We have various sponsors. You can see them on the shows that we do. They're normal companies. We do ad sales. The money that came for Tenet was a standard licensing agreement from a Nashville company and I will stress the DOJ has dropped that case. There's no evidence of any wrongdoing or anything nefarious. And the meeting I had with Netanyahu earlier this year was basically a meeting with journalists and influencers in order to convince us that we needed to be on board with their war with Iran, to which most people were like, nah, and I strongly oppose U.S. involvement with Ukraine, Israel, or otherwise. I don't care for, I'm not a fan of, I literally have nothing. Israel is what it is. It is what it is. Let me give you the story from the gray zone. Billionaire Bill Ackman convened stormy Israel intervention with Charlie Kirk, sources say. Now, why is this story so prominent and why are people sharing it so far and wide? Well, the story is that Charlie Kirk was turning on Israel. He was critical of Netanyahu, critical of the war in Gaza, as many conservatives are. And I'm not just talking about people who hate Israel. By all means, I can point to people who I think are really Israel obsessed. But I think it's fair for anyone to criticize Israel's actions in Gaza. It is a complicated scenario. And I know there are a lot of pro-Israel people who will justify it and say rather offensive things. In fact, Charlie Kirk himself has a video where he mocks the destruction of Gaza, which is why I'm like, you think Israel killed this guy? But that's just me. I'm not here to support or defend anyone who believes in or likes Israel. Never have I been approached by any Israeli lobbyist types or anything, offered anything in exchange for being in favor of Israel. I was invited, as were many others, to a meeting at Blair House in D.C. where Netanyahu would be. And of course, I took it because I would meet with any world leader, including Donald Trump. In this meeting, some people were pro-Israel, some people were not. There was a lot of blathering, which was really inane. It's supposed to be Chatham House, which means we can say what was said, just not who said it. And it's about respect, I guess, so that people can speak kind of off the cuff without being dragged in the press. Largely, the meeting was about why the U.S. should support war with Israel, to which most people said no. Now, there were some claims about things I had said, arguing that I argued that there were Qatar was funding anti-Israel propaganda. I asked that question based on online stories. I did not assert it. Though I do believe foreign interests are propping up anti-Israel content, I'm not saying explicitly Qatar. I'm saying there are people who live in Muslim nations who are interested in watching this content and commenting on it, and that is anti-Israel. Now, let's read this story. The argument they're saying is that Charlie Kirk slowly turning on Israel created a motive for Israel to kill Charlie Kirk. Now, I'm going to say it right away. By all means, there were donors that were likely upset. That's what the story seems to be. And in fact, when I've reached out to people who work for TFUSA, they all say in no way was Israel involved. This is ridiculous. Charlie was working with them. They loved him. He was their guy. He was so pro-Israel. As for the donors, the response I typically get is it's being overblown, blown out of proportions, and in no way was it murderous or anything negative. Despite the fact there were concerns about people like Tucker Carlson appearing at Student Action Summit or at AmFest or whatever, they were not threatening his life. They were saying, we don't want to provide funding if this is the direction you're going. Very, very different. But let's read. The Gray Zone reports a month before Charlie Kirk's killing, billionaire pro-Israel money man Bill Ackman arranged an intervention in the Hamptons during which sources say he and others hammered Kirk for the conservative leader's growing criticism of Israeli influence in Washington. Kirk came away fretting about Israeli blackmail, sources say, as he contemplated a Catholic conversion. On September 11th, one day after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, so they're just repeating it. Bill Ackman said, I feel incredibly privileged to have spent a day and shared a meal with Charlie Kirk this summer. He was a giant of a man. The Gray Zone has spoken to 5 people with intimate knowledge of Kirk's meeting with Ackman, which was held in early August. According to one source, Kirk was left upset after the gathering turned into an intervention where he was hammered for his increasingly skeptical views on U.S. special relations with Israel and for platforming prominent conservative critics of Israel at his TPUSA at events. Since publishing this report, the Gray Zone has learned from one attendee of the Hamptons event that Ackman convened the influencers under the auspices of a discussion about Zoran Mamdani and the supposed threat he posed to the West if elected mayor of New York. But the meeting went off the rails when Ackman personally confronted Kirk about his views on Israel. The public face of UK Lawyers for Israel, Natasha Hausdorff, joined in the argument and began screaming at Kirk, according to one attendee. When his hosts presented him with a detailed list of every offense he supposedly committed against Israel, Kirk was horrified, said one person. Ackman also allegedly demanded Kirk rescind his invitation for Tucker Carlson to speak at the upcoming America Fest 2025 in December. The whole thing was a disaster, said an attendee. I'll just give you full disclosure. Not that I think it's going to happen, and who am I even asked this? But the idea that we've been pitching is that we bring back the panel we did with Tucker, Luke Rutkowski, Seamus Coughlin, Ian, myself, and leave an empty seat where Charlie was, because this was one of the biggest shows we'd ever done, and it was an honor that Tucker would come on my show. I'm a fan, and I don't know if they'll be able to pull that off, but that's at least a discussion we were having, so I don't know why they would not include him. Kirk, according to one person with inside knowledge of the meeting with Ackman, said he left feeling as though he had been subjected to blackmail. In a series of texts with the Gray Zone, Ackman described his accounts of his meeting with Kirk as totally false. He pledged to release a public statement providing his own account of the event, but refused the Gray Zone's request for clarification or further details. He would not accept phone calls from this reporter. I think I can easily put this to bed, Ackman promised. I have receipts, as they say. He did not abide when asked to provide so-called receipts. We have this from the New York Post. Bill Ackman shares text messages with Charlie Kirk to dispel Candace Owens' claims of Israel blackmail. Now, again, this story is an entirely separate story from whether or not people believe that Charlie Kirk was assassinated by Israel. However, it is being connected because they say this is the reason they did it. I do not believe that for a second. Sorry. I think Israel is a lot of things. I think Mossad is a lot of things. And I think Mossad is willing to do things that you would find to be amoral, evil, or otherwise. I don't think they would kill the one guy who was like the most prominent pro-Israel guy over this issue. Even if Charlie Kirk were to broken away from these donors, I don't see it as a reality. Israel had tremendous influence through Turning Point. Even if Charlie Kirk was not going to give them everything, where he was going to be, we are solely pro-Israel, it would be the most ridiculous thing imaginable for Israel to say, we will lose a massive power platform like this. I'll put it this way. If a prominent leftist asked me to be involved in one of their summits, I'd go do it. The chance to speak with all of these leftists is an opportunity, even if it's small. I'm thinking about this logically and mathematically. You don't stop Charlie Kirk, who is granting you this access. It makes no sense. New York Post says Bill Ackman on Tuesday night published private texts with Charlie Kirk, including an invitation he extended to slain conservative activist, do dinner sometime with the ladies, to swat down what he called slanderous claims by Candace Owens that he staged a Hamptons intervention to blackmail Kirk over Israel. Now, I do believe I have the actual post from Bill Ackman pulled up, and I believe, is this it? Let's pull this up. Ackman says, a few facts, correction, and receipts to dispel some misinformation going around social media. The TPUSA Hamptons event was not held at my house, but rather at a hotel in Bridgehampton. As I previously explained, I did cover the cost of the event, i.e. travel, food, and lodging for participants. This was not a secret event, and no one signed an NDA. Everyone, including the Turning Point rep who attended, are totally free to share whatever they want about what took place and what was discussed. This was not a Chatham House Rules event. I love this because everyone's mad at me. I love all these responses who were like, Tim met Netanyahu. Yeah, and I'd meet everybody else. If Xi Jinping was having a meeting in D.C. and I got invited to it, I'd be there as well. Take it or leave it. Some have publicly shared their experiences and perspectives on the convening in the spirit of transparency. I encourage any of the other attendees that have not already shared their thoughts on the event to do so. That said, I understand why some may not want to do so. I'm going to tell you my thoughts. I don't believe that this meeting was convened, as some describe it, as a meeting of prominent influencers they could bring in to teach to be better at influencing. I believe the intention of this event was specifically and explicitly to promote Israel and to speak with influencers about why they should be supporting Israel. Charlie Kirk has done these videos. They've popped up online where he's sitting with young Gen Z guys and he's saying Israel's not bad, or he's saying don't rag on Jews and things like this. I believe it was Charlie Kirk's intent, as well as TPUSA and those around him, to defend Israel, to try and convince young people to defend Israel. Charlie Kirk was actively doing this, and I believe that's why they convened this event. And there are some people that argue more than that, but I think that's fair to say. He goes on to say that I've been reluctant to, he says, I'll read a little bit earlier. I did not complain to Charlie about Tucker Carlson's criticism of me at TPUSA. I did ask him why he thought Tucker attacked me, and he told me that he did not know why. He told me that he thought my statement in response to Tucker was a great one. It can be found here. I've been reluctant to post private messages, but in an effort to put this whole thing to bed, I will share the following brief exchange with Charlie. And when reading this text exchange, ask yourself whether Charlie sounds like someone who I threatened, blackmailed, or was a subject of an intervention. Charlie Kirk. He says, how are you? I'm doing great. Really enjoyed our time together last week. Thank you again for doing that. It was great, and great to get to know you better. We should do dinner sometime with the ladies. Absolutely, that would be awesome. Let me know when you'll be in New York City, and we will have you over. Thank you, I will. We are there a few times this fall. Great, just let me know. And so he says, lastly, I totally understand the shock and distress to all those who knew or followed Charlie Kirk are feeling after his untimely and tragic death. But let's not let those emotions cause us to construct conspiracy theories that can cause innocent people serious, potentially deadly harm. Okay, there's a lot to break down. Xavier DeRusso, we've had him on the show several times. He says, yes, dozens of influencers, including myself, were invited to an event by Charlie and his team, not by Bill Ackman. Charlie wanted to get to know rising conservative voices and where we stood on various issues. The subject matters were primarily about the following topics: Islam's growing presence in the West, marriage and dating, Mamdani, right-wing infighting, the economy, and various narratives regarding Israel. Charlie wanted to see us respectfully debate him and each other. There was a range of views there on every topic. He wanted to learn our perspectives and analyzed our debating skills from an objective point of view. He started each topic with a provocative statement to encourage the creators' debate. For example, one of the topics was, if I were to post right now, Bibi Netanyahu needs to resign, what should be the reaction? This, of course, led to a number of responses. Someone said the post would indirectly empower Hamas, and Charlie responded that statement was moral blackmail, and that if she wants to debate the topic of Israel, she needs to work on using more facts and less emotion. Bill and Charlie never debated or argued. I don't know where that narrative came from. I'm not going to pretend to know every thought of Charlie's, but he very much stood with Israel. His frustrations expressed during the Hamptons event were that many people debated the topic emotionally rather than logically. He goes on to mention that when he was contacted by the Gray Zone, he didn't panic. He didn't know why this person was calling him or how I got their number. We were encouraged to keep using our voices to fight for what we believe. Now, here's what I think. Why was I invited to the meeting with Netanyahu? I think that the individuals who reached out, who got me invited, did so because they are actively trying to lobby for Israel. Tim Pool likely should be invited because he's neutral on the issue. I don't much care for Israel. And so there's an opportunity to sway someone like me. That's what lobbying is. They didn't, by the way. I believe this narrative is largely the same, that TPUSA Ackman did convene this for various reasons. I believe they likely were trying to talk to these people about what to believe. Or I'm sorry, not what to believe. They were trying to talk to them about how to convey what they believe, is what I meant to say. However, why were these people chosen? Likely because they thought they could sway them on the issue of Israel. This is called lobbying. So I'll put it like this. I was invited to this meeting at Blair House. Netanyahu was going to be there. I have no problem meeting a world leader. I understand what happened on October 7th. I think it's silly to say that Israel orchestrated it or let it happen. I don't follow these conspiracy theories. I believe that I was invited largely because I'm fairly moderate on the issue. I don't care to blame Israel for everything. I think some people are overly obsessed. I do think Israel is capable of very serious evils and wrongs, like many countries. Mossad is going to do what's in their best interests. I think they said invite Tim Pool because we can sway him. Or at least they would try to. And so I appreciate the invite. I don't in any way hold disdain for those that extended this invite to me. I'm just not going to change my opinion by meeting a guy, and I'm going to have these arguments. When I asked Netanyahu explicitly, does he believe, or is there any evidence that Qatar is actually funding this sentiment? He said, I don't know, maybe. He didn't have a real answer. It was then pushed forward in pro-Israeli media that I had explicitly stated they were doing this. Now, again, I'll stress this. I believe that there are foreign interests influencing this country from China, Iran, Russia, whatever. Of course they would. And this includes anti-Israel voices. I believe that there's many people who live in these countries who watch videos that are critical of Israel, which gives larger view counts to people who make videos critical of Israel. The question I have is how many of these people are in America and how many are not? It's an important discussion. If someone is getting many views because they're getting views from Indonesia or Pakistan or wherever, this is not American audiences. And I think it's important to understand. But again, I will stress this, and I think it's important to understand that the reason these people were likely invited is because they thought they could get them to espouse a more pro-Israel message. And I don't know that for sure. I'll come back to Ian Carroll in a second. I wanted to bring up the Emily. Here we go. Evan Kilgore says, before going to an exclusive influencer retreat in the Hamptons with Jewish billionaire Bill Ackman versus going after. Emily Wilson from Emily Saves America, whose honor has been impugned. In a private message saying, also, do you not think it's weird Israel pays everyone to go over there and make videos, promote it, etc.? Like, where else does that? And then the next message in August 25, Israel isn't committing a genocide, but Muslims around the world are, if you guys want to talk about that. I know it doesn't go as viral, but if you guys really care, let's talk and go over the data. I'm not saying Emily did anything wrong, and I don't think it's even proof that her opinion was swayed. Just because you're critical of Israel doesn't mean you have no problem saying Israel also isn't doing a thing. But that's the argument. Like, you can be critical of Israel and still not think it's a genocide, is my point. I think there's a lot of people rightfully critical of Israel, and that's fine. Now, here's where it gets weird. Ian Carroll, with 11.4 million views, the day after Kirk's assassination said, yesterday was a turning point for Israel-U.S. relations. Less than 24 hours, and the internet already figured out who the most likely culprit was. He was their friend. He basically dedicated his life to them, and they murdered him in front of his family. Israel just shot themselves. Huh? Listen, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I've been tracking every angle of this story, including the Israel one, and I'm going to show you statements from Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. To outright assert overtly, it's a little grifty, Ian. Now, I messaged Ian. I said, no, I don't think so. Here's why. And so, with all due respect, I like Ian. But this is over the top, bro. I think that's fair to say. All right. A bit over the top. Now, Ian also in the past had argued that I was trying to buy the Daily Wire. Brother, no. I don't have the money for that. But this is a little over the top to make this claim. But I'm showing you because it's got 11.4 million views. And there are people who certainly believe it. Now, Matt Gaetz shares this. I'm just going to leave this here. And it's a post from June 20th from Mark Levin, who is very pro-Israel, who said, the Romans and Persians are gone, Charlie. The Jews are still here. How do you explain that? And Israel has defeated the Iranian military. Did it in 2 days. Come back home, Charlie. Reject the kooks, my friend. It's an article from Mediaite. Charlie Kirk warns against war with Iran. Not even the Romans could defeat Persia. I similarly agree with Charlie. I don't want the U.S. dragged into war with Iran. I do not believe it was a good thing. I believe it was bad when Trump launched these strikes, but we got out of it, so I will accept it. Trump won. I will accept it. I do not want foreign war, nor do I want the U.S. to be dragged into these wars because of Israeli interests. I do not think Israel rules the world or runs the United States. That's silly. I believe the U.S. absolutely will give in to Israel because the U.S. requires this. It is a military bastion for the West and for the liberal economic order in the Middle East. So the U.S. is not controlled by Israel, but certainly has interests in aiding them. And I don't think we should get dragged in. That's an aside. Let's get back to the news. Chris Menon posted this from Tucker Carlson, which I will play.
He did not like Bibi Netanyahu, and he said that to me many times, and he said to people around him many times. He felt that Bibi Netanyahu was a very destructive force. He was appalled by what was happening in Gaza. He was, above all, resentful that he believed Netanyahu was using the United States to prosecute his wars for the benefit of his country, and that it was shameful and embarrassing and bad for the United States, and he resented it. Didn't hate Netanyahu. He wasn't out there with a placard saying that, but he certainly expressed that to me and a lot of other people. And there's no question that Bibi's defenders on the internet will call me a liar or a kook, but that's a fact. And enough text messages exist that I think it can probably be verified in pretty short order. Not that it needs to be, because that is true. He did not like.
I believe Tucker Carlson. I don't believe everything he says. I think Tucker can get things wrong. But when Tucker comes out and says Charlie Kirk didn't like Netanyahu and was critical and appalled by what's happening in Gaza, I believe it. That's a reasonable position for anyone to have. In fact, I largely agree with Charlie Kirk. Does that extend to Israel then killed Charlie Kirk? I don't think so. And the reason why is, again, I'll say this. I have never been threatened by anybody with death or anything for criticizing Israel. I have people tweeting at me that because I don't criticize them enough, I must be a shill-in on the payroll, which is ridiculous. I will say it right now. My view is the U.S. should cut off all funding, separate ties. We do not need to be involved in whatever it is they got going on in the Middle East, and it's a threat to the United States security when Israel is getting involved in war, say with Iran, that then drag us into it. So when I get invited to this meeting earlier this year, and the argument literally from Netanyahu was the U.S. needs to back Israel on this or Iran's coming for you next, the response was laughter. Seriously. I think, and I said this in this meeting, Israel has got 5 to 10 years. Gen Z is no longer buying it. The left is anti-Israel. The right is either Israel critical, anti-Israel, or anti-interventionist. And so and that's probably why they're doing what they're doing, Israel, in terms of Gaza, because they're about to lose U.S. support and they know it. Now back to the point at hand. Matt Gaetz responding to another post about Tucker Carlson saying, I have personal knowledge as to many of the claims Tucker is making here, and they are 100% true. It's an 8-minute video. I will play some of it for you now.
And I said, probably not going to talk about that. I'm not going to torture you. I know your donors hate this when I say that. And also Epstein was in the news, and it was clear to me that, Epstein's probably not like a Mossad agent or something, but Epstein clearly had contact with Israeli intelligence and American intelligence and French intelligence, but the only one you're not allowed to talk about is Israeli intelligence. But it seemed true to me, and I had done.
I'll just pause and ask. This never affected me. I don't understand this. I make videos about Israel all the time. I am not some sycophant for Israel. I've never experienced this. We talk on Timcast IRL, which is one of the biggest live streams. I think we had like 90,000 concurrents last night, or 100,000. Actually, I think it was over 100,000. And we talk about Epstein and the Mossad all the time. Yeah, I don't know. It's just me. Now, in response to what Matt Gaetz said, AF Post says Tucker Carlson said that Charlie Kirk told him at a TPUSA Student Action Summit last July to highlight Epstein's connections to Mossad. Distinguishing between Netanyahu and the state of Israel, Carlson claimed that Kirk hated Netanyahu and his war on Gaza despite loving Israel. So this is from the other video, but I show Matt Gaetz saying it's true. So we have this. I'll come back to the Jackson Hinkle one. This was, I should have had that one next to the Ian Carroll one, mind you. We've got this from Candace Owens. Megyn Kelly also saying she was threatened and intimidated and pressured over Israel and who to platform. She also confirms Charlie experienced the same nefarious pressure. Thank you, Megyn. Daylight is the best disinfectant. Mike Cernovich, I defer to him. After what Megyn Kelly said, now what? Going to call her mentally ill too? Say she's using a death for clout, call her obsessed? Now what, propaganda bots? Here's what I will say to you guys. The insinuation that Mossad, Israel, killed Charlie Kirk, I think, is a bridge too far. You are making so many assumptions, and I believe it's largely rooted in just general disdain or distrust for Israel. Some people just really hate Israel. Some people just really hate Jews. I think it probably is correct, based on even my independent fact-finding, that there were Jewish donors upset that Charlie Kirk was not hardline for Israel and everything Israel is doing. But that being said, Charlie Kirk was overtly pro-Israel. Now, the argument I've heard is that Israel killed him because it'll open the door for new leadership, which will be substantially more pro-Israel, and thus they can keep Tucker Carlson out. That's silly. They need only offer him more money or more donors or more lobbying. I mean, this is just, if the argument is that Charlie Kirk went to the Hamptons over this Israel stuff, it sounds like they were pressuring him to be more pro-Israel. But I don't know how you get more pro-Israel than Charlie Kirk, to be completely honest. And I will say this too. I believe that Charlie Kirk's statements, it's largely a negotiating and sales tactic. When you look at some of these videos of Charlie Kirk and the things he said about Palestinians or Gaza, it's like, yeah, this dude was pro-Israel. So why would Charlie Kirk publicly and to his friends say, I agree with you on Gaza? Because it's called rapport extreme turn. Rapport is the first step in changing someone's mind, and Charlie knew that. Here's my genuine opinion. Charlie had reasonable concerns about Israel, because I think any sane person would. Charlie was extremely pro-Israel and wanted Israel to succeed. Charlie, talking with his friends like Tucker or Meghan or anyone else, is going to say, I hear you and I agree with you. Why? That is how you connect with people. So for someone to then take that, Charlie recognizing the feelings and concerns of his friends and being reasonable on them, as to mean that he was turning on Israel is a bit too much in my opinion. My assessment, Charlie Kirk is probably facing a lot of pressure from donors. Israel did not kill Charlie Kirk. I think that's really absurd to assume. I do believe that there's information and what we know about what's going on with Charlie Kirk's assassination that doesn't add up as far as we can tell right now, but it is early. And now I'd like to take you through that. So we have this video. It's called Ballistics Don't Lie from outside the Overton, a small channel with 25,000 subs, but 520,000 views, breaking down theories on what actually happened to Charlie. Now, I've seen videos of this from other people, and the argument they're making is that the building back here to Charlie's back right is the actual origin of the round, and that it went through Charlie creating an exit wound. Certainly, they make their argument, and I'm not a ballistics expert, so I don't know. What I can say is there's tons of videos. Everybody's offering up something different, and it's confusing, and it's hard to know for sure. The simple solution to all of this, I will give you my personal probabilistic estimate. Charlie Kirk was taken out by leftist radicals who are organized. This man did not act alone. They covered things up. They obfuscated details because it was premeditated. For instance, no one in their right mind believes that the messages released by the FBI are one-for-one messages. In fact, this is a transcription, which they say was the released text messages. I don't even know that it was text. It might have been spoken. I don't know. If you genuinely believe that this is a real conversation, boy, do I have a bridge to sell you. It may be. The Reddit Lies account, it's a fun account to follow, by the way, shout out, said they actually think it is real because they spend all day reading through weird Reddit autistic screeching, and it does look a lot like this. Here's my point. You know, when I read through this and someone says, remember how I was engraving bullets? The effing messages were mostly a big meme. This reads like an orgy of evidence. People don't talk this way, nor would they. I mean, it's a little over the top. If it was a direct transcription, all the texts are perfectly punctuated with proper grammar. Yeah, I don't think so. Nobody texts that way. So that's why nobody believes it. Matt Walsh has a really great answer. He says, I am leaning very strongly towards the theory that this text exchange was scripted as a way to absolve the boyfriend. It's almost exactly what Walter White did at the end of Breaking Bad. This feels like a strategy they cooked up from watching too much TV. I actually agree with this. In my view, Washington Post, Kirk shooting suspect had leftist ideology but motive unclear, Utah official says. From independent.co.uk, man 71 told cops he shot Charlie Kirk in order to give the real shooter time to escape. Now he's being charged with child sexual abuse material. The FBI is investigating a lot more than 20 people in Discord chats with suspected Charlie Kirk assassin. And I'll grab one more from you. I believe it's from the Free Beacon. Let me see if I can find this. Yes, here we are. This is an important one. FBI investigating social media accounts that appeared to indicate foreknowledge of Kirk assassination. Now, by all means, I know there are going to be people who say Tim's covering up for Israel or whatever because that's what they want to believe. That's silly. And I'll tell you why I don't believe it was Israel. As I already laid out, I think Charlie was the biggest proponent of Israel, and they lost one of the most important machines that they had in place. Even if Charlie was critical of Israel, Man, does this hurt them. Believe whatever you want to believe. We have here numerous accounts that look to be trans-aligned, following each other in discords that express foreknowledge of Charlie Kirk's assassination. One saying, Charles James Kirk, Mr. College Dropout, does not know what's coming tomorrow. Be ready. This isn't a threat. It's a promise. I can't tell you what is or what isn't. I can tell you there are a lot of questions about what happened that fateful day. Videos purporting to show a bullet coming from another direction, but it's all speculation based on grainy footage, and we don't actually know. We don't. But by all means, you're allowed to entertain these ideas and explore and try and discover. But I'll give you my assessment. I don't believe the FBI is lying. I don't think that Cash and Dan are being duped. They are outright saying we are investigating this. What I think right now makes the most sense, though it's early. Pre-planned. Many leftists were involved in some degree, having foreknowledge. Maybe not explicitly or directly helping the shooter, but they knew. These 7 accounts that posted online, these are the weakest link. These are people who were so giddy that they knew it was coming, they needed everyone to know that they knew. They wanted people to see them as being special and part of the in crowd. This is why people leak information. They want others to know that they have something. And so, 7, it was more than that. The FBI is currently investigating more than 20 people in these discords. How many people, we don't know, but more than 20. 7, whatever this group is, leaked the information a little bit because they wanted you to see it. It sounds to me like there are leftist militants who have been planning the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was assassinated by them. The confusing details are all because premeditated murders often go unsolved. And if they did plan this, and it sounds like many people were involved, they certainly plan for what comes next. The messages, as Matt Wall states, were to create confusion and to absolve the boyfriend of any responsibility. Because the boyfriend in the text is going, what? I had no idea this was happening. How could you do this? Then when the shooter is caught, they say, this is doubt, isn't it? So if they were to ever try and convict the boyfriend for any kind of involvement, you could present a jury with reasonable doubt. These are the text messages they had. Do you really think they've planted fake messages? That's harder to believe, isn't it? It is. And so I'll admit that. But why did I do it? I can't believe you did. Remember when I was engraving the bullets and had those memes on them? I think it's reasonable to assume the boyfriend was involved, and these messages were crafted intentionally as fake evidence, an orgy of evidence. Now, I will say this. You're familiar with the phrase orgy of evidence? It comes from Minority Report, and it's when they find the bed full of all these photos, and he says, no, I don't believe this. All of the evidence spattered right there to prove the bad thing was going to happen. We call that an orgy of evidence. Typically, when someone commits a crime, they'll panic, they'll try and cover it up a little bit, and you'll find enough evidence. Not all of it. So why would I believe these messages just overtly? If it is an orgy of evidence, what is the conspiracy? What's really going on? The simple solution would be the boyfriend, or the roommate was trying, the shooter, the assassin, was trying to cover up for the boyfriend. I don't have all the answers, my friends, but what I will say is we've known for the longest time the far left is violent. We know that they've plotted murders. I am getting death threats right now. Israel isn't doing it. Groypers are not doing it. Okay? I have spoken, I have criticized Israel. In fact, Timcast IRL has had tons of people critical of Israel. We have Dave Smith is a friend. He comes on relatively often, critical of Israel. We've had Candace Owens on, not in the capacity of criticizing Israel, but we'd have her again. I don't see them as making these amateur mistakes. I don't think so. It makes the most sense in my view, and by all means tell me I'm wrong in the comments, that left-wing groups who we know to be violent, who have plotted the death of me. Look, prominent conservatives, I don't want to name them because of their security reasons, but these high-profile people on the right don't have security guards because of Israel or Groypers. Ben Shapiro maybe, to be fair. But it's typically because of the far left. The people who swatted us, the evidence points to the far left. The people who physically attacked me, they were far left. The death threats I get every day are from accounts that espouse far left views. There is no Groyper conspiracy masquerading as leftists. These leftists go on camera and desecrate memorials. They go on camera, they punched Jack Posobiec. We film it, we see it happen. They tear down our monuments, they desecrate the memorials and grave sites. We get it. There is a plethora of evidence throughout the past several years indicating the far left was capable, willing, and would. Charlie didn't have security because he feared Israel. Charlie didn't have security because he feared Groypers. He had security because of the left. By all means, it doesn't mean it's definitive. We don't know. But I think right now, taking everything into the big picture, it looks like the simplest solution is there are many leftists who organized this. It was not a lone wolf factor. I reject that. That seems silly. How can you believe these are direct transcripts of text messages? That's silly to believe. No one believes that. No one on the right or left believes that. So then what is it? Do you think the FBI fabricated this to get this guy convicted? That's a maybe. But I think considering the fact that they caught a guy, released him, the simpler argument actually is the FBI is having a hard time but doing their best. They didn't fabricate this. I think the reality is the left did. Do you think if they were planning this, they'd just think ahead? There's one point. Look at this question. How long have you been planning this? A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there's a squad car parked. Who says that? A bit over a week, I believe. Colloquial English is probably a week. Maybe a week. Not I believe. I don't know. I think a week. Nobody talks like that. This seems scripted for sure. And if it is, again, Matt Walsh, I think, hit the nail on the head with the hammer. And he's got 7 million views on this one. I agree. We don't know. Back to this video that is going massively viral from Ballistics, called Ballistics Don't Lie. There's good points being raised. None of it's definitive. Grainy footage and artifacting make it hard to understand, and everybody thinks they know exactly how someone would react in getting shot in a certain way. There are interesting questions I have. When the story first broke, the video appeared to show, the first video, Charlie getting shot from the front, and reports were that a man in the crowd screamed about trans people and then shot him. And that's what I thought happened. And from that assessment, many people posted videos purporting to show a hole in his shirt and then the impact point on his neck. The hole in the shirt they're pointing to is actually a lav mic, which you can see. Some people have shown a photo of Charlie, and you can see a weird line. It looks like padding on his arm. In fact, it is just the sunlight casting a shadow against his necklace. And you can see in other photos he's wearing a metal bead necklace. These videos are grainy and hard to break through, and I'm not telling you what to believe. I don't know. I'm just saying what we know right now. I have reached out to people. I have asked questions. It appears this is leftist. And I don't know why we would need to excuse them for any reason. Even those that are critical of Israel know the far left does this. We've all talked about it. In this instance, the evidence points to the left. Maybe I'm wrong. You tell me. Comment below. I'll leave it there. Smash the like button. Share the show. Stay tuned. Of course, we have more to come. We'll see you all in the next segment.